Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, going deep into the 41st millennium to explore a figure, well, he's shrouded in myth and legend and a lot of reverence too, the God Emperor of mankind. And you might think you already know everything about him,
Right.
but stick with us. We've got some excerpts from the Warhammer 40K wiki, and we're going to be looking at some lore, a YouTube video on the God Emperor of mankind.
Yeah, and I think, in a universe like 40K, it's worth remembering that the lore is constantly kind of evolving and changing, and you're going to find inconsistencies, you're going to find different interpretations of things.
It's almost like trying to piece together um, ancient history from fragments and different interpretations.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at the man, the myth, the legend, and try to answer some of the big questions like who is this God Emperor?
Yeah.
How did he get to be in the state that he's in? And what does the future hold for him and for humanity? So let's kind of unpack all of this, and maybe we start at the beginning with the origins. And already that's a bit of a mystery. One of the older origin stories paints a pretty interesting picture where you've got these shamans, these ancient human psychers, and they decided to pool their psychic energy into one being.
They did, sacrificing themselves basically to create what they called the new man,
Oh, wow.
who would, guide humanity and protect it from the dangers of the warp and all of.
Wow. So talk about a heavy burden right from the get-go.
Yeah.
To be born with that. But there's this sort of newer origin story as well, right? That's a little bit more vague on the details of his early life.
There is, and it's interesting how, like, even though the specifics might be different, both of these origin stories really emphasize that the Emperor was meant to be this protector of humanity, right? Like, that was his destiny, his purpose.
Yeah.
And that kind of sets the stage for a lot of what comes later.
Okay, so we've got these kind of intriguing origin stories, but let's talk about what makes him different.
Right.
How come he has these powers? What makes him not like a regular human?
Well, the Emperor is actually what's known as a perpetual. And these are incredibly rare individuals who have, for all intents and purposes, immortality, thanks to like superpowered cellular regeneration, which means that he's actually been around for millennia. He's witnessed the rise and fall of, countless civilizations. He's walked among us since the dawn of humanity.
That is really something. I mean, just to think about the perspective on humanity that he must have to have seen all of that.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of interesting things about his time during like the age of technology, where he was spending time with other perpetuals like Olivia Surica. But it was really his journey to Molech, a demon-infested planet, that really set him on his path.
Molech, what happened there?
This is where things get really interesting, because this is where he goes to strike a bargain with the Chaos Gods.
He's going to negotiate with the very forces that he's trying to protect humanity from. That's just so interesting to me. It seems like a real contradiction to what he wants to do.
It does, but it also kind of shows his willingness to make really difficult choices, even morally gray ones,
right.
For what he perceives to be the greater good.
Yeah.
And I think that, this decision that he made in secrecy and in desperation, it foreshadows a lot of the tough compromises that he's going to have to make throughout his reign.
Yeah, it shows a certain ruthlessness to his character.
Yeah.
But also pragmatism that I think we'll probably see as we go along. So tell me, what was this Primarch project? He made this deal with Chaos to gain knowledge to make the Primarchs, right?
Exactly. So the Primarch project was this really ambitious plan by the Emperor to create superpowered beings, almost like demigods, right? To lead humanity into this new era. And he used his own DNA, combined it with advanced genetic engineering and this forbidden knowledge that he gained from this pact with Chaos.
So he's creating super soldiers to lead humanity. It's just like straight out of, a science fiction story.
Yeah.
But of course, things don't always go according to plan in the 41st millennium.
No.
So what happened?
Well, Chaos, never one to miss an opportunity, decided to intervene. And the Primarchs, while they were still infants, were scattered across the galaxy, ripped away from their father before he could, even really begin to train them.
It's so interesting to me, like, what if that hadn't happened? What if the Primarchs had stayed with the Emperor? Would they have stayed loyal to him?
Yeah.
Would they have resisted the temptations of Chaos?
Ah, yes. the tantalizing what if.
Right.
One of the many things that keep us coming back to the lore of Warhammer 40K, right? But I think for now, let's maybe shift our focus to the period that's known as the Unification Wars, because this is where we really start to see the seeds of the Emperor's, pragmatism kind of take root.
Okay. So this is back on Terra, right? Before the Great Crusade, and he's trying to unify the planet.
Exactly. This is where he's kind of stepping out of the shadows and starting to consolidate his power. And he does so with the help of these warriors known as the Thunder Warriors.
Oh, the Thunder Warriors.
Yeah, I think of them as like proto-space marines.
Okay.
They were genetically engineered for just brutal efficiency. They were not meant to be, subtle.
But he kind of eliminates them after they serve their purpose, doesn't he?
He does. Once their purpose was served, he deemed them too unstable, too unpredictable. And yeah, he ordered their eradication. And it's a chilling decision when you think about it. But
yeah, I mean, he's got a planet to unify.
Right.
He's facing unimaginable challenges.
Yeah.
So, what's he going to do?
I think it really reflects that core belief that he has, that sacrifices have to be made for the sake of humanity's future.
Yeah. And I think, while it raises some pretty uncomfortable questions about, the nature of power and what you're willing to do to achieve something you believe is important.
Yeah.
It also sets the stage for the Great Crusade.
Exactly.
Which is really the next chapter in his story.
Right. So the Great Crusade is this monumental undertaking where the Emperor is leading his newly created Space Marine legions, and he's setting out to reunite humanity across this vast expanse of the galaxy. And it's a campaign that's driven not just by military might, but also by this ideology, the imperial truth.
The imperial truth. So that's the rejection of religion, of superstition. It's all about a kind of like purely rationalistic view of the universe.
Yeah.
And, on one hand, it sounds really enlightened, but on the other, it's kind of extreme.
Well, I mean, it was certainly a bold and controversial ideology, but the Emperor truly believed that this was necessary to protect humanity from the corrupting influence of the warp.
So he sees all of this, uncontrolled psychic power and fear and ignorance, all this stuff that's fueling the warp.
Yeah.
He wants to kind of bring humanity out of that and into the light of logic and science and reason. But even with the best intentions, wasn't there resistance to that? I mean, weren't there people who wanted to hold on to their old beliefs?
Of course, there were always going to be those who opposed the imperial truth.
Right.
And I think perhaps the most significant challenge actually came from within the Emperor's own ranks during the Council of Nicaea.
Okay. Now we're getting into, this is where the Psyker debate comes in, right?
Exactly. This is where the debate over Psykers and sorcerers really comes to a head. And it's a really pivotal event that I think reveals a lot about the Emperor's his character, because he had this deep-seated distrust of sorcery.
Right.
He saw it as a very dangerous path to chaos corruption. And this is where you see like Magnus the Red, one of the Primarchs, actually arguing against him.
Right. Magnus, who is, an incredibly powerful Psyker himself.
Exactly. And Magnus really believes that, knowledge isn't inherently good or evil, and that Psykers can be trained, they can be controlled, and their powers can be used for the good of the Imperium. In fact, he even warns the Emperor about this vision that he has of a future betrayal, which will become, quite relevant later on.
Yeah.
But the Emperor, he's not willing to listen. He sees it as too great a risk. And he ends up outlawing the use of librarians within the Space Marines. And this decision, as you might imagine, has some pretty far-reaching consequences. It really sows the seeds of mistrust and ultimately contributes to, the Horus Heresy, which we'll be talking about more later on.
Yeah, that's a whole other deep dive. But you mentioned that the Emperor is working on something secret at this time, this Webway project.
He is.
What was that all about?
Yeah, so the Webway project was perhaps the Emperor's most ambitious undertaking. He essentially wanted to create a future where humanity would no longer have to rely on the warp for interstellar travel.
Oh.
So no more navigating through that chaotic dimension
One would
full of
say,
demons and all sorts of things.
So he wants to create a safer way
It
for
is.
humanity to get around.
Yeah, the webway, if you recall, is this network of interdimensional tunnels created by the ancient Eldar, and it allows for near instantaneous travel across vast distances. It completely bypasses the dangers of the warp.
But if it's so beneficial,
Yeah.
why keep it a secret?
Right.
Why not tell everybody about this? Why not tell his Primarchs? Why not get everybody on board with this project?
I think the Emperor's reasons were pretty complex. He feared that if he revealed it too early, it would invite, sabotage both from within the Imperium and from without. He knew Chaos would try to stop this at all costs.
Yeah.
And also there's the whole issue of the Eldar, they might not be so happy about humanity just using their webway.
Right. So this secrecy, this isolation is starting to cause some problems, it seems like.
It does.
And, particularly among his Primarch sons.
Yeah, I mean, the Emperor is becoming increasingly distant from them because he's so consumed by this webway project.
Right.
And this emotional void, as you can imagine, is going to have some pretty serious consequences.
Yeah, this is where Lorgar comes in.
Right.
And the word bearers.
It is.
They're the ones that really set this whole Horus heresy thing in motion.
You're right. Lorgar, the Primarch of the Word Bearers, he was always drawn to faith and spirituality.
Well, that's kind of ironic, given that the Emperor is so staunchly anti-religious.
It really is. You'll recall that Lorgar actually established a full-blown emperor-worshipping cult.
Right.
Which obviously incurred the Emperor's his wrath, pretty seriously.
So how did this kind of lead to the heresy?
Well, I think that public humiliation, that sense of rejection from this father figure that Lorgar admired so much, it left him really vulnerable. He was seeking meaning, seeking purpose, something to fill this void that was left by the Emperor's absence.
Right.
And that's when Chaos kind of whispers in his ear, offering him this twisted form of enlightenment.
So Chaos takes advantage of his his disillusionment and turns him against the Emperor.
Exactly. Lorgar becomes convinced that the Emperor, with all his power and his secrecy, is actually a god. But a god who's denying humanity its true destiny.
Right.
A destiny that's somehow intertwined with chaos.
Whoa.
And so he starts corrupting his brother Primarchs, sowing these seeds of doubt and rebellion.
Right, and this is all leading up to the fall of Horus, right? The War Master, the Emperor's, favorite son. He turns traitor.
The corruption of Horus is it's this devastating blow. Lorgar and the Chaos Gods, they prey on his insecurities, his doubts, his longing for his father's approval. And they whisper to him, promising him power and glory and a chance to reshape the galaxy in his own image.
And isn't there something about Magnus trying to warn the Emperor about what's happening with Horus?
Ah, yes, Magnus. Remember, he defied the Emperor's edict against sorcery.
Right.
Because he believed that he could control his psychic powers and use them for good. Well, he actually has this vision of Horus's betrayal.
Oh.
And he tries to warn the Emperor.
Okay, how does that backfire?
Well, in his desperation to get this message to the Emperor, Magnus uses forbidden sorcery to breach the psychic wards protecting the Imperial Palace on Terra.
Oh.
And this is a reckless act, even though it's born of good intentions.
Yeah.
It has really catastrophic consequences.
So he's trying to be the hero, but he ends up kind of making things worse.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, happens a lot in 40K.
It really does.
But so what happens? I mean, how does this backfire?
Well, not only does his actions weaken the Emperor's defenses, leaving him vulnerable, but it also disrupts the Webway project.
Right.
The very project that's meant to shield humanity from chaos is now actually becoming a conduit for demonic incursions.
Oh, no.
The warp is spilling into the material realm, and the Emperor is forced to divert his attention to try and contain this new threat.
So Magnus has accidentally opened the door to chaos.
Essentially, yes.
And now Horus, who's, fully corrupted by chaos, he launches a full-scale rebellion.
He does. And the galaxy is engulfed in this brutal civil war, brother against brother, Primarch against Primarch.
Right.
The Imperium that the Emperor had fought so hard to unify is being torn apart.
Yeah, it's all falling apart.
Yeah.
But Horus eventually reaches Terra. Right.
He does.
And that leads to that final that tragic confrontation. Can you tell me a little bit about that battle?
Yeah, so the Battle of Terra it's this cataclysmic event. It's a clash of titans
Hmm.
that will decide the fate of the galaxy.
Right.
Horus, who's empowered by the full might of chaos,
Mhm.
lays siege to the imperial palace.
Mhm.
Sanguinius, the Primarch of the Blood Angels,
Yeah.
known for his nobility, his psychic gifts,
Mhm.
he's the first one to confront Horus.
Uh,
Right? Sanguinius, the angel.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the most beloved Primarchs. So what happens to him?
So the battle between Sanguinius and Horus is legendary. Sanguinius fights with incredible valor, but he's ultimately outmatched. He falls to Horus's blade,
Yeah.
mortally wounded. But even in his final moments, he manages to strike back and inflict this grievous wound upon Horus.
So he's a hero to the end, sacrificing himself to try to weaken the enemy so that the Emperor has a chance. So the Emperor finally arrives to face Horus.
He does. The Emperor, weakened from containing the webway breach and emotionally devastated by the betrayal of his sons,
Yeah.
he confronts Horus aboard his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit.
So it's father versus son. It must have been incredibly powerful, I would imagine, and really heartbreaking for the Emperor.
Imagine the weight of that encounter,
Yeah.
right? The Emperor is still clinging to this sliver of hope that he can redeem his favorite son, and he hesitates. But that hesitation almost costs him everything.
So Horus almost kills him.
He does. Horus unleashes this psychic assault that shatters the Emperor's physical form and leaves him on the brink of death.
Wow.
And it's only then, seeing the utter corruption that has consumed his son, that the Emperor finally unleashes his full power.
And he destroys Horus.
He obliterates Horus's soul, banishing him back to the warp. But the victory is, as they say, a Pyrrhic one.
Right.
The Emperor's body is broken, his spirit shattered. Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, finds him clinging to life.
So he survives, but just barely. So what happens next?
With his dying breath, the Emperor instructs Dorn to take him back to Terra and to inter him within the Golden Throne.
Oh.
The same device that was meant to be like the pinnacle of his webway project is now his prison, this life support machine that's designed to keep his shattered form alive. But there's a lot more to that story.
Yeah.
And we'll delve into the Emperor's current state and what that means for the future in the final part of our deep dive.
So the Emperor is working on this webway project. Can you remind me again, what was that all about?
Yeah, the Webway project was maybe his most ambitious undertaking. He envisioned a future where humanity wouldn't have to rely on the warp for interstellar travel anymore.
Oh, okay. So instead of like navigating that dangerous, chaotic dimension, he wanted to create something safer.
Exactly. The Webway is it's a network of interdimensional tunnels, you see, created by the ancient Eldar.
Okay.
And it allows for almost instantaneous travel across vast distances, so you completely bypass the dangers of the warp.
Well, why keep it a secret then? If it's so, I mean, it seems so beneficial. Why not share this vision with his Primarchs? Why not get everyone on board with it?
Well, I think his reasons were complex. For one, he feared that revealing it too early would make it vulnerable. He knew that chaos would try to stop it at all costs. And there was also the issue of the Eldar themselves. They might not have taken kindly to humanity just using their webway.
Right. So all this secrecy, this isolation, it seems like it's just causing more problems.
Yeah.
Especially with his Primarch sons.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, the Emperor is becoming increasingly distant from them.
Right.
Because he's so consumed by this webway project and this emotional void it has, pretty serious consequences.
Yeah, and this is where we start to get into Lorgar, right? And the word bearers.
It is.
They're really the ones who set this whole Horus Heredia thing in motion.
Right, Lorgar, the Primarch of the Word Bearers. He was always kind of drawn to faith and spirituality.
Well, that's kind of ironic, given that the Emperor is so anti-religious.
It really is. And you'll remember that Lorgar actually established a full-blown emperor-worshipping cult.
Oh, that's right.
Which, incurred the Emperor's wrath pretty seriously.
Yeah. So how did this lead to the heresy?
Well, I think that public humiliation that sense of rejection from this father figure that he so admired,
Yeah.
it left him really vulnerable.
Hmm.
He was seeking meaning. He was seeking purpose, something to fill this void that was left by the emperor's absence.
Right.
And that's when chaos whispers in his ear, offering him this twisted form of enlightenment.
So chaos is just waiting to take advantage of his disillusionment and turn him against the emperor.
Exactly. Lorgar becomes convinced that the emperor, with all his power and secrecy, is actually a god. But a god who's denying humanity its true destiny,
Right.
a destiny that's somehow intertwined with chaos.
Oh, wow.
And so he starts corrupting his brother Primarchs, sowing these seeds of doubt and rebellion.
And this is all leading up to the fall of Horus, right?
It is.
The War Master, the emperor's, favorite son. He turns traitor.
It's a devastating blow, Lorgar and the Chaos Gods, they prey on his insecurities, his doubts, his longing for his father's approval.
Yeah.
And they whisper to him, promising him power and glory,
Right.
a chance to reshape the galaxy in his own image.
And I remember, wasn't there something about Magnus trying to warn the emperor about what was happening with Horus?
Yes. Magnus, remember, he defied the emperor's edict against sorcery.
Right.
Because he believed that he could control his psychic powers, use them for good.
Right.
Well, he actually has a vision of Horus's betrayal.
Oh.
And he tries to warn the emperor.
Okay, so how does that backfire?
Well, in his desperation to get this message to the emperor, he uses forbidden sorcery to breach the psychic wards that are protecting the imperial palace on Terra.
Oh.
It's reckless, even though he has good intentions, it has catastrophic consequences.
So he's trying to be the hero, but he's making things worse, which kind of feels like, a recurring theme in 40K.
It really does.
So what happens? How does this backfire?
Well, not only do his actions weaken the emperor's defenses, leaving him vulnerable, but it also disrupts the Webway project.
Right.
The very project that's meant to shield humanity from chaos.
Right.
Becomes a conduit for demonic incursions.
No.
The warp spills into the material realm, and the emperor is forced to divert his attention to try to contain this new threat.
So Magnus has basically opened the door for chaos.
Essentially, yes.
And now Horus, who's, fully corrupted by chaos, launches a full-scale rebellion.
He does. And the galaxy is just engulfed in this brutal civil war. Brother against brother, Primarch against Primarch.
Right.
The Imperium that the Emperor fought so hard to unify is being torn apart.
It's all falling apart.
Yeah.
But Horus eventually reaches Kara, right?
He does.
And that leads to that final confrontation, that tragic confrontation. Can you tell me a little bit about that battle?
The Battle of Terra is it's this cataclysmic event. It's a clash of titans that will decide the fate of the galaxy.
Right.
Horus, empowered by the full might of chaos, lays siege to the imperial palace, and Sanguinius, the Primarch of the Blood Angels, known for his nobility, his psychic gifts.
Right.
He's the first one to confront Horus.
Sanguinius, the angel.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the most beloved Primarchs. So what happens to him?
So the battle between Sanguinius and Horus is legendary. Sanguinius fights with incredible valor, but he's ultimately outmatched. He falls to Horus's blade, mortally wounded. But even in his final moments, he manages to strike back and inflict this grievous wound upon Horus.
So he's a hero to the end, sacrificing himself to try to weaken the enemy so that the Emperor has a chance. So the Emperor finally arrives to face Horus.
He does. The Emperor, weakened from containing the Webway breach and emotionally devastated by the betrayal of his sons.
Right.
He confronts Horus aboard his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit.
So father versus son. It must have been incredibly powerful and heartbreaking for the Emperor.
Imagine the weight of that encounter.
Yeah.
The Emperor is still clinging to this sliver of hope that he can redeem his favored son.
Right.
And he hesitates. But that hesitation almost costs him everything.
Horus almost kills him.
He does. Horus unleashes this psychic assault that shatters the Emperor's physical form, leaves him on the brink of death.
Wow.
It's only then, seeing the utter corruption that has consumed his son, that the Emperor finally unleashes his full power.
And he destroys Horus.
He obliterates Horus's soul, banishing him back to the warp. But the victory is, as they say, a Pyrrhic one.
Right.
The Emperor's body is broken, his spirit is shattered.
Mm-hmm.
Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, finds him clinging to life.
So he survives, but just barely. What happens next?
With his dying breaths, the Emperor instructs Dorn to take him back to Terra. And to inter him within the Golden Throne. The same device that was meant to be like the pinnacle of his Webway project is now his prison.
Right.
This life support machine that's designed to keep his shattered form alive. But there's more to this story, and we'll delve into the Emperor's current state and what that means for the future in the final part of our deep dive.
So the Emperor is entombed within the Golden Throne. More machine than man at this point. His body broken, his spirit diminished. It's a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah.
But is that really the end of his story? I mean, what does this mean for him? What does this mean for humanity? Is there any hope?
The future is always in motion, especially in a universe like Warhammer 40K, right?
Right.
And you might be surprised to learn that even in his weakened state, the Emperor isn't completely passive. You know, there have been moments, glimpses that suggest he can still exert a powerful influence on the galaxy.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Give me some examples. What kind of influence are we talking about here?
Well, consider the storm of the Emperor's wrath, for example. During the Age of Apostasy,
right.
This warp storm of unimaginable scale erupted across the galaxy, and, you know, many believe that it was a manifestation of the Emperor's psychic rage.
Oh.
A backlash against the corruption and tyranny of the High Lord Vandir.
So even while he's trapped within this Golden Throne, he can unleash his psychic power on a galactic scale.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible and terrifying.
Yeah. Are there other instances where he's kind of intervened in galactic events?
More recently, you have the return of Robert Guilliman,
right.
Primarch of the Ultramarines.
Yeah.
He was resurrected by this tech priest named Belisarius Cawl.
Oh, okay.
Using this combination of advanced technology and, believe it or not, Eldar magic.
Wait, Guilliman is back. That's huge. So what happened after his resurrection?
Well, Guilliman journeys to Terra, and he actually enters the Imperial Palace.
Oh, wow.
And communes with the Emperor.
So they talk.
They do. The details of their conversation remain a closely guarded secret.
Of course.
But Guilliman emerges as the Lord Commander of the Imperium, leading a new crusade to push back the encroaching darkness.
So there's hope then. The Emperor is still, capable of communication, perhaps even guidance. And with Guilliman back in action, maybe the Imperium actually has a fighting chance.
It's certainly a glimmer of hope in a pretty grim galaxy, but we can't forget that the Golden Throne is failing.
Right.
It's ancient technology, barely understood, and the tech priests that maintain it are really struggling to keep it functioning.
Right. So if the throne fails, what happens to the Emperor? What happens to the Imperium?
Well, the consequences would be catastrophic.
Yeah.
An Astronomicon, that psychic beacon that emanates from the Emperor, it would go out. And without it, interstellar travel through the warp would become almost impossible. And the Emperor himself, his physical form, already ravaged by decay, would finally succumb to death.
So the fate of the Emperor and really the entire Imperium is hanging in the balance here. Is there anything that can be done? Is there any way to save him, to avert this impending disaster?
Well, there are those that whisper of the Star Child prophecy, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. It's a concept that's shrouded in a lot of mystery and debate.
Right.
But the essence of it is this. Upon the Emperor's death, his soul, it's said that it will give birth to a new entity in the warp, a being of pure compassion and power known as the Star Child.
And this Star Child could somehow save the Emperor.
The prophecy suggests that the Star Child might actually merge with the Emperor's essence and lead to his rebirth. It's a concept that's fraught with uncertainty.
Right.
Some believe it's a genuine possibility, a chance for the Emperor to return in a new form, free from the limitations of his broken body.
Right.
Others dismiss it as a fool's hope, A dangerous delusion, or perhaps even a manipulation by chaos.
So the Emperor's future, like so much in Warhammer 40K, is shrouded in mystery and uncertainty.
Hmm.
It's a web of possibilities and potential outcomes, each one more mind-boggling than the last.
It really is.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job today of exploring the Emperor,
Hmm.
his origins, his rise to power, his tragic fall,
Yeah.
the precarious state of his existence now.
Hmm.
We've talked about the Golden Throne, the threat of its failure,
Yeah.
the possibility of the Star Child prophecy,
Hmm.
and we've really kind of gotten a sense of who he is.
Yeah.
His ambition, his pragmatism,
Hmm.
his unwavering dedication to humanity's survival,
Right.
and just the burden of this immense power that he carries.
It's a lot.
But ultimately, the question remains: what does the future hold for him?
Hmm.
Is he a dying god?
Hmm.
Is he a relic of a bygone era? Or is he something more?
Hmm.
Is he a force that can still shape the galaxy? Is he a being on the cusp of a transformative rebirth? These are questions, that I think we can all ponder
Yeah.
as we continue our journeys through this vast and ever-expanding lore of Warhammer 40K.
It's a universe that's full of these kinds of mysteries, and I
Yeah.
think the God Emperor, even 10,000 years after his entombment,
Right.
he remains an enigma,
Mm.
a figure that continues to fascinate and
Yeah.
inspire debate.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into the God Emperor of mankind. What a journey it's been. We encourage all of you to continue your own explorations of this incredible universe. Keep questioning, keep searching, and keep diving deeper into the mysteries of Warhammer 40K.